morning, everybody. Welcome. My name is Sharon Jobity, and I'm the Vice President of Human Resources with the Ontario Centres of Excellence. And it is my pleasure this morning to welcome you to the innovation presentations. And I wanted to actually introduce you this morning to a number of organizations who are either partners in the innovation space here in Ontario. Each is either a department or an agency of either the provincial or the federal government, or they receive funding from the government. Together they offer innovators and entrepreneurs a variety of programs, opportunities, and advice to help them develop and research their business. Our first presenter this morning will be from the Build in Canada Innovation Program, or BCIP, and our presenter is Helen Braiter. Helen is the Director of the BCIP within Public Works and Government Services Canada. Created by the Government of Canada to bolster innovation in Canada's business sector, the BCIP helps companies bridge the pre-commercialization gap by procuring and testing late-stage innovative goods and services within the federal government before taking them to market. So I think there will be some time after the presentation or during the presentation to ask some questions. And so I'd like to welcome Helen. Come on up.
Hi there. Thank you very much. As mentioned, I'm Helen Braiter. I'm the Director of the Build in Canada Innovation Program. So off we go. What is the Build in Canada Innovation Program? In 2010, the Government of Canada launched a pilot program called the Canadian Innovation Commercialization Program, CICP, as a pilot to help bolster innovation in Canada's business sector, to help companies bridge the pre-commercialization gap, to help them get their pre-commercial goods and services from the lab into the marketplace. And because of the success of the pilot program, the program was made permanent in 2012. It was doubled in size to $40 million a year, and it is now an ongoing permanent program. So what is this all about? Why are we doing this? In the work that I was doing before I launched and led this program, I looked at the barriers that companies faced when doing business with the federal government and in doing business generally. And what we kept hearing over and over is that the Government of Canada was not acting as a first buyer, and that without Canadian government support, companies here in Canada were having difficulty making that first sale. We're having difficulty bridging that valley of death, that pre-commercialization gap. Because when they went to sell their products and services to either other companies or to other governments, the first question that they were being asked was, did the Canadian government buy your innovation? Does the Canadian government support your innovation, support your company? Who is your reference customer? Who's your first buyer? And the answer was often nobody. And there is no better example of this than RIM, now BlackBerry. So the BlackBerry, the technology behind the BlackBerry, was in fact co-developed with the Government of Canada. DRDC at the time, BCIP, did participate in the development. But when it came to selling the first BlackBerries, RIM came to the Government of Canada and we said, we're not good at buying innovation. The way our procurement works, we can't buy things that we don't know about. And RIM made their first sale to the Government of the United States. And now I'm sure if you look around, or anybody here who is a federal government employee knows that all federal public servants have a BlackBerry permanently strapped to their bodies at all times. That's a huge problem. And that's why this program was put in place. Okay? This is just a very quick outreach. We do outreach. That's what I'm doing here. But more importantly, for those companies who are here in Ontario, you should be aware that we have a regional office here in Toronto to help support you with respect to this program. We have a booth right over there, so that you actually don't have to come into Ottawa in order to get information about the program, et cetera, et cetera. There is an office here in Toronto. You can visit us right over there. So how does the program work? It's not a grants and contributions program. It's not a repayable loan. Okay, what is it? It is a first buy program. okay? We are actually buying your innovation, not the IP associated with it, but the innovation itself, okay? Gives you a reference buy, an actual government contract. We place it with a federal government department, giving you a reference customer. We provide you a test of your innovation, okay? And we provide you with feedback that you can use to help move your innovation into full commercialization. So that's what we are offering you, okay? So as I said, it's a competitive procurement, so it works through a call for proposals, like a request for proposals, if anybody has done business with the government before, standard process. I don't normally read my slides, but I am going to read this one sentence because it is critically important. Through a competitive process, the government will buy pre-commercial, your innovation must be pre-commercial, goods or services, though we are looking at technology. So it may be a service delivery model for a technology for testing and use in the federal government. So we now have two components. We have a standard component, which was the old CICP, and that's a $20 million per year buy on the standard side, and a military component, and that's also working its way up to 20 million, okay, because we just launched it. So when launching this program, I didn't want to have priority areas. They said I had to have priority areas, so environment, health, safety and security, and what I like to call everything else, enabling technologies. A pen is an enabling technology. It enables you to write. These are not restrictive, okay? If your innovation doesn't fit in here exactly, don't worry about it, just pick one, okay? And it's not 5 million, 5 million, 5 million, 5 million, okay? It is whatever we get in those categories. Now, military will have priority areas, okay? While the standard component priority areas are fixed, the military priority areas will change based on the round. So in the last round, it was protecting the soldier, okay? It is up to D&D what the military priorities will be round by round. It will be based on their priorities. If anybody's familiar with Tom Jenkins and his report on defense procurement, you will notice that one of his key industrial capabilities was protecting the soldier. The priority areas will be aligned with that, but they will change call by call. So this is what you and your innovation must have in order to qualify for the program, okay? So for the standard component, we are looking at a contract of $500,000 or less. On the military side, it's $1 million. Now, what does that mean? Somebody once put their hand up and they said, well, Helen, I have an energy bar and it's worth $1. Does that mean that I would get a contract with the government for $1? The answer is no. You tell me however many or however much of your innovation you need to sell me in order for an adequate test. So I said to him, no. For example, you would tell me that you want all RCMP officers in Alberta to have that energy bar in their vehicle for a few months' time and then report back as to whether it kept them alert, awake, whatever. I said, so that would be 100,000 energy bars, and that's $100,000. And he said, well, why wouldn't I tell you I want every public servant to have one of these energy bars at their desk? And that's 500,000 energy bars, and that's $500,000. Because that's not a reasonable test, okay? You must be looking at a reasonable test. Most of the contracts come in at around 200 to 300,000. We've had a $9,000 contract, and we've had all the way up to the top threshold. Okay? You tell me what you need for an adequate test. For priority areas or on military, right now is protecting the soldier. That will change moving forward. Not have been sold commercially. Now when this was originally put together, we had in our minds things are either pre-commercial or they're commercial. But as most of you know, there's a huge gray zone sitting in there. Like, what if you've sold for beta testing? What if you've sold and now you've made improvements on the innovation? That's most likely fine, but we don't want to see it on the shelves of Walmart. Now, obviously, most innovations that we're talking about are never going on the shelves of Walmart, but no commercial sales either here in Canada or abroad. Okay? Canadian bidders. This is a Government of Canada program. It's about supporting Canadian companies. It would be quite odd if Canadian federal dollars were used to go to foreign companies. This is about Canadian companies. This is about jobs and growth here in Canada. What is a Canadian company? It is a company with a presence in Canada. Okay, how does that stop a company from putting a post box here in Canada and saying they have a presence? Is the next one. 80% Canadian content. We want the R&D to be done here. Okay, that's what we are looking at, is supporting development and companies here in Canada. And then obviously you must own the innovation in order to sell it to us. And don't laugh, because we have had companies who do not own or have rights to the IP that have actually submitted to the program. So when I say late stage pre-commercial, what am I talking about? If anybody's familiar with the concept of technology readiness levels, which we stole from the US military, we are looking at technology readiness levels 7, 8, 9. So in round 1 of the program, when it was a pilot and we were learning, we actually accepted TRL 6, 7, 8, 9. But we found 6 was too early. The best way to define 7, 8, 9 is to talk about the difference between 6 and 7. 6 is, it works in my bathtub, and I want to build one that's going to work in the ocean. And 7 is, I have one ready to be tested in the ocean. So we are looking for prototypes ready for prime time, ready to be tested in an operational setting. The other really important concept, because this is an innovation program, has anybody ever tried to define innovation? You should try it. There is no definition, globally recognized, even nationally recognized, of innovation. So we had to make one up, and I think we came up with a pretty good one. We define innovation as how much of an advance on state-of-the-art is your product as compared to what is currently commercially available. And we are looking for that delta. So you can see in my top right quadrant that we have slight advance and significant advance. So what's an example? Let's use the tablet, let's use the iPad. When the first iPad came out, it was a significant advance on state-of-the-art. When you looked at the marketplace, there was nothing to compare the first tablets to. They were not laptops, they were completely different, and smartphones as we know them today didn't really exist. So that would be a significant advance on state-of-the-art. But when the iPad 2 came out, basically all they did was slap a camera on the front and the back of it and called it a new product. And I mean, it sold well, but it was not a significant advance on state-of-the-art. I think all of us said, like, why doesn't this thing have a camera? My phone has a camera. So that's what we're looking at when we talk about advance on state-of-the-art. So I'm going to quickly talk about evaluations, just to give you guys an idea of how we do it and what the number of proposals that we receive is. So this is an example of round 2. Okay, we received 337 proposals in. Okay, that's a lot. Almost all of them made it through the screening criteria, which is basically, do you have an address? That is in Canada. Then what we do is me and my mighty team of 7 are not able to evaluate 335 proposals. That's an impossibility. So we use the wonderful, wonderful folks at the NRC IRAP, the Industrial Research Assistance Program. Anybody who's not familiar with this organization, get familiar with them. They're actually right there, NRC IRAP Concierge Service. They just launched that. As a business in Canada, you should know about IRAP. So they do our evaluations for us. They have the experience and the expertise and the technical knowledge in order to do this. What I should mention, while I'm talking about evaluations, is this program is extremely innovative in the way that we are delivering it. Has anybody done business with the federal government? Yes? So you know that when you bid on a requirement, you go to buy and sell. It used to be Merck's, now it's buy and sell. You download the proposal, and then you open up your computer, and you turn on Word, and you start with that blank document, and you start typing, right? And you type, and you respond to each of the requirements, and then you're required to print out 7 copies and have your financials sealed separately, and you've got to get them delivered to the bid receiving unit by 2 o'clock on a Thursday. And it is almost always 2 o'clock on a Thursday. Okay, no more of that. There's this amazing, amazing innovation out there. It's called the internet. You guys may have heard of it. So what we have is an online bid submission system. That doesn't mean that you do you prepare your proposal in Word and then email it to me. It's actually a fully interactive online bid submission system. And IRAP also does their evaluations online. Not only does it make this program completely paperless, I'm sure you can imagine how much paper 337 proposals, 7 copies of each, would produce. It means that we can get this done in record time. Standard government times for evaluating 337 proposals would be like years. Honestly, it takes months and months and months and months to get through any procurement. We've got this down to a couple of months. So the evaluations are done online. Once that happens, first IRAP does the screening criteria, and it's a pass-fail on what I will talk about in the next slide. Then they do a full evaluation of the proposals, okay? So what are the key components that a proposal is evaluated on? And these are important for businesses to know about. So we already talked about innovation. The product or service being proposed must be in advance on state of the art, and we are looking at that. We talked about readiness. So we're looking at late stage R&D. Test plan, this is really important. So you must submit your proposal with a test plan. So often people ask me, should I already have a testing department lined up, or do you find that for me? So your best bet is to go and speak to federal government departments that may be viable testing departments for you. No bonus points are awarded for coming in with a testing department, but it will help you refine your test plan so that you understand how and where your innovation will be tested. It will also help us match your innovation, which makes my job and your job easier down the road. Okay? In the test plan, you've got to demonstrate objectives. What are you looking to get out of this test? Okay, what are the risk mitigation strategies? And it can't be none. This is an innovation. There is always risk associated with buying innovations, and we recognize that as an innovation program, that not every single test is going to be 100% successful. If it was, then there's no point in doing the tests. Okay? Mitigation strategies, realistic timelines. This can't be a 5-year test. Okay? We run on an annual cycle. It should give you a hint that we are looking at an annual cycle for the testing. Commercialization capacity. Now, this is about your company. Okay, this program is not about helping those inventors that love to tinker in the basement and love to stack up a pile of patents. This is about companies who are going to commercialize innovations to help them grow. This is economic action plan. This is jobs and growth. So we're looking that you have the financial capacity to get that innovation into the market, or that you have a plan. This is about your plan. And don't put down as your plan that you're going to get a contract from BCIP. Okay? We need to know what your plan is to get from where you are now to where you need to be to commercialize. Management team. I'm not looking for you to have like a COO and a CFO and a CEO, but I need to know that you have the people or the plan in place in order to have the right people to commercialize. So you can't tell me that you have nobody doing your financials. You don't have to have a CFO, but you need to at least demonstrate that you've got a company who is looking at your books. Okay? This is a serious program about getting businesses growing here in Canada. And IP strategy. So as I mentioned, we don't take the IP associated with the innovation, but we are looking that you have your intellectual property protected. Because when you submit to this program, you're ready to commercialize. It will become public, if you win, that you sold to the government. And while the government signs, we don't sign non-disclosures, but as part of our job, we can't go and tell the whole world, if we're testing your innovation, what the inner workings are of it. But it will be public that we are testing the innovation. So you need to have a protection strategy in place. So the validation committee, this is a really cool thing. This is, we actually have an external validation committee. that validates the highest ranking proposals. So this external committee is made up of various people. They may be angel investors, they may be entrepreneurs in residence. And what they're there to tell us, they're not there to tell me that the top ranked proposal should be number 12 and the 30th ranked proposal should be number 7. They're there to tell us whether we got it right. The Government of Canada is fantastic at putting together all these programs and never going out and consulting with you. And we do this on an annual basis where we actually go out and ask them, is this program doing what it's supposed to be doing? Okay? Are we seeing the innovations that a program in Canada like this should be seeing? And we've made many refinements to the program based on the advice of this external validation committee, the Innovation Selection Committee. So just to give you an idea of how the innovations are ranked, I'm going to do this very quickly. It's basically top to bottom, and we draw the line when we run out of money. Okay, and those are what we call our pre-qualified innovations. Pre-qualified means that you are essentially on a list to be matched to federal government departments. It's not a guarantee of a contract, but most of the innovations that make this pre-qualified list do move on to matching and to receiving a government contract. So who matches you to the department? Like I said, you are best to be marketing your innovation to federal government departments, but I do have an innovation management team that will help you with that once you are pre-qualified. That will assist you. We know which departments are our strongest testing departments. We do have contacts across the government and across the country within the government that we can match you to, but ultimately it is your responsibility. So we will help make those connections to find you a match. Departments also. There are many, many, many departments that are very interested in this program. And I'll tell you why. And when you go talk to those departments, you can list some of these things. Number one, the program provides the funding to buy the innovations. So no money is coming out of the departmental budgets to actually buy the innovations. Okay, and that's critically important. Number two, and anybody from the government will agree that this is very important, the department doesn't have to do any procurement. They don't even have to talk to their procurement staff. I deal with procurement. So they basically receive the innovation and are required to test it and provide the innovator with feedback. And so that's basically it. This is just a summary of everything I talked about. Okay, here we are in the bottom left doing outreach. Okay, like I said, the businesses compete. It is a competitive procurement process. Competitive means fair, open, and transparent. So I should mention, so we received the 300 proposals. We are not comparing proposals to each other. So if you and a competitor who are both looking at finding the same solution to a problem, submit in the same round, we're not comparing those two proposals to each other. We are comparing both of those proposals to what is currently available in the marketplace. Okay? Government procurement, our tenets are fair, open, and transparent. So as I mentioned, evaluation happens. The next thing is really important as well. Anybody who's done federal government procurement knows that finding out why you didn't win is a major, major problem. So we will give you that information. We automatically give you a full debrief that you can use to help you in your next application, okay? And then we have, as I mentioned, contracting and testing. So that's it from me. Here's our contact information. Please go to our website, buyandsell.gc.ca/innovation. We have a mailing list. If you subscribe to it, you will, I promise, only receive 3 to 4 emails a year, not a day, not a week, but a year, that are critical to the program. And as I mentioned, we have a booth. It's right on the other side of there, and there is an office here in Toronto to help support you through this program. Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Do we have time for questions? Yes, no? Do you want him to go to the microphone for questions? If you can just use the mic right there.
Thank you very much for your presentation. How can you have a competitive process for something which is brand new? that no one else has?
So as I mentioned, what we do is we are looking at things like commercialization capacity, the ability of the business to fund the development process, and we are most critically looking at advance on state of the art. So scores are awarded for each of the categories that we're evaluating, for each of the proposals, and then they are ranked based on the score according to the criteria that we are evaluating. And that does make it a competitive procurement process. So you're not competing specifically, as I mentioned, against another similar innovation that may have been submitted to the program. You are essentially competing against yourself, okay? We are looking at the innovation very specifically, how much of an advance on state of the art it is as compared to what is currently commercially available. But the proposals are scored and they are then ranked, making it a competitive process.
Thank you.
Hi, Helen.
Hi, Jeff.
You mentioned 80% Canadian content.
Yes.
Can a foreign-owned company, if they have an office in Canada, be eligible?
Yes, so if a foreign-owned company with an office in Canada, so let's use a company that's not going to be submitting a proposal, most likely. Let's use IBM Canada. IBM Canada is a Canadian company, okay? They have buildings here in Canada, they have staff here in Canada, they pay taxes here in Canada. If they were to have something that was developed in the States and they tried to bring it to this program, they're not going to meet that 80% Canadian content rule. But if they were to set up an R&D lab here, and there are foreign companies that have set up research facilities here, development facilities here in Canada, then yes, they would be eligible, and they could demonstrate 80% Canadian content, then yes, they would be eligible for the program because, like I said, IBM Canada is a Canadian company.
And what happens to the IP?
The IP rests with the company, no matter what, even if the evaluation and the feedback when we're doing the testing does result in the company choosing to make changes to the innovation. We do not take the IP associated with that. Okay? I can get on my pedestal and give a whole other lecture on how I feel about the government taking intellectual property from companies who partner with the government, but we have chosen not to touch IP.
So final question, historically now, what's the ratio of foreign-owned companies that have been successful?
All the companies, by definition, are Canadian companies. So if you would like...
Whatever.
I can't determine from the list who's foreign-owned.
Or maybe, let me rephrase,
like they're Canadian.
Startups versus established companies.
So startups versus established is a great question. There, I can answer that question. So you can actually go to our website, buyandSell.gc.ca/innovation, and click on pre-qualified innovations on the left-hand side. This program is open to Canadian companies of all sizes, SMEs as well as large companies. It is over 90% small and medium-sized companies. You will see Boeing there. Okay, you will see MDA there, and as far as large companies, I think there might be one or two more, and that's it. So it is very proportionally SMEs that are submitting proposals and are winning contracts through this program. All right, thank you very much. I will be over at the booth to answer any additional questions, as will one of my counterparts from the Toronto office. And I believe this afternoon you can sign up for a one-on-one if you want to speak to me over just past my booth over there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Helen. That was wonderful. Really great to understand how we can move through the, that gray zone in terms of helping us to move our innovation to full commercialization. So thank you, Helen. So moving right along, our next presentation this morning is from the Networks of Centers of Excellence, or NCE. Our presenter is Lisa Drouillard, who is the Deputy Director of the NCE Secretariat. NCE offers a suite of programs that mobilize Canada's best research, development, and entrepreneurial experience, and focus it on specific issues and strategic areas. If you have any questions, I know there will be some time afterwards to ask, so I'd like to welcome Lisa. Come on up.
Thank you. Hi, and I'm going to try and keep my talk fairly short in order to answer as many questions as I can from this group. We have a booth right around the corner, and indeed last year we had folks lined up around the corner because it was a massive competition year for the NCE. And this year we do have competitions upcoming, and we've got announcements coming up around the results of our very busy competition year for new research networks and commercialization centers. But we don't have applications coming up in the next 6 weeks, which is actually the best time to come and speak with us. So I'll walk through our mandate and what our full suite of programs is here at the NCE. So the 25-year long mandate of the Networks of Centres of Excellence is to mobilize Canada's research talent in the academic, private, and public sectors and apply it to the task of developing the economy and improving the quality of life of Canadians. And I would add to that, part of that is also building a very strong pool of highly qualified people that can assist in that enterprise. Now, often there is a sense, as our suite of programs has evolved, which I'll talk about, the sense that the classic research networks were somehow not as engaged with industry as, say, a commercialization center. But certainly as our current suite of NCEs at the present time shows that that's very far from the case. Many of our classic NCEs, and from the inception of our program, the idea really was to channel the best minds and innovations from the public and private sector to achieve those economic aims and benefits to Canada. So the mandate of the program across our full suite is achieved by stimulating leading edge research, for sure, but that is a necessary but not sufficient step to get funding from the NCE. We don't get really any applications, and certainly none that come to the full application stage that don't have world-class excellent research. The research teams and the multidisciplinary consortia that come together to apply for a network or center need to do a lot more. They need to have a plan for developing HQP, for creating international partnerships, most importantly for accelerating information exchange and the uptake of new ideas and technologies, and to increase Canada's reputation. Now, we often have a question, especially because there are big differences across our suite of those networks that are truly national in terms of having nodes at institutions and with different partners from coast to coast, and those particularly within our newer programs, the Centres of Excellence for Commercialization and Research and the business-led NCEs, that may not have a presence from coast to coast but are expected to assemble a critical mass of expertise and activity to be a node in Canada that attracts international partners and international attention. So this is the suite. We started off 25 years ago. We're having big birthday party and anniversary this year. We had many people in this room and in this building out to our big anniversary party about a month ago to celebrate our silver anniversary. The most established program is the Classic Research Network program, the NCE. Since then, we've added to that suite of research-focused programs with the Canada-India Research Centre of Excellence initiative, which does much of the work of an NCE but focused on international partnership with India, and the Knowledge Mobilization Initiative, which is focused a great deal on finding receptors for research done in Canada and mobilizing that to the greatest effect. Centres of Excellence for Commercialization and Research, program near and dear to my heart. That is a program that I lead. We'll talk about its mandate, the business-led Networks of Centres of Excellence, and the Industrial R&D Internship Program that was established in 2008. So I'm going to talk briefly about some of the impacts of our programs, but by and large, this is just an indication that everything that you'll see in these quick impact slides is included both in the insert to last month's research money, which focused on the impact of our program over the last year, but also we try to capture this in our publication for our 25th anniversary, which is also available up at our booth, where we focus not only on our global impacts, but also to look at case studies of each of the core programs that we offer and look at how those really represent well the core criteria of our programs. So one of the key stats from our program is really around leveraging. And there again, I harken back to this idea that the NCE Classics is also about partnerships, also about engaging industry. You'll see that for our investment last year alone, the Classic Research Network program leveraged $65 million, which is over a 1-to-1 match. The CSER program, which is focused on commercializing research, had over a 2-to-1 match, and the smaller but mighty business-led NCE program had close to a 3-to-1 match on our investment in last year alone. Also, what you see in terms of the leverage of a 25-year program is that we have a massive network within the NCE program as a whole. The NCE last year alone represented the might of nearly 3,000 scientific peer-reviewed articles coming out of the NCE enterprises, and this is a fairly modest number of new companies launched. That really focuses a great deal on spin-outs from the research enterprise. The number of startups supported by the NCEs and CSERs dwarfs this number by a pretty significant margin. This is one of the key metrics for our program, however. It's very hard given that the NCEs and CSERs cover a broad range of sectors. It's always very difficult to figure out what are the key measures of success. But one of the key ones that we use is really just looking year to year at how many partners, public and private, the programs attract. And in the last year alone, the NCEs engaged over 2,000 organizations, and 775 of those came from industry. So the NCE Classics, a 25-year-old program, are there to unite researchers in large academic-led networks to focus on issues that are critical to Canadians. By mobilizing multidisciplinary teams, nothing gets funded within the NCE that could be funded by NSERC alone, or SSHRC alone, or CIHR. The funding flows through those granting councils to fund national research networks that tackle an issue from all sides. So it requires a multidisciplinary approach. Engaging partners, particularly those that are going to be the end users of the research that is generated through this massive research network. There's a huge component in NCE Classic around training the next generation of highly qualified people, and to increase the collaboration and break down barriers between the public and private sector and across partners. Oops, sorry, I think I've gone backwards. So this is our current suite of networks, but as many of you know, we've had a very busy competition year over this past year, and this list of currently funded networks will change in the coming months, where we expect to make announcements around new NCEs, which generates new partnership opportunities for the discovery community. The NCE Knowledge Mobilization Program is there to support national and international networks to engage knowledge users and really to put that research to work. And this is our suite. Again, some of these are very recently established and set up knowledge mobilization networks. Now, the CSER program, as I mentioned, is a program that I lead, and it focuses a great deal on providing the resources to bridge the gap between inventors and commercializers. The CSER program does not fund research. There may be some end-stage R&D that gets supported in order to take an idea and move it to market, but the uniqueness of the CSER program is that we only fund the operating costs of commercialization centers. This program is targeted to across the priority areas of the federal S&T strategy, but in light of the fact that they span across all of those disciplines, they embrace a really broad range of business models in how they go about doing this. Some of them in the ICT sector will focus more on business incubation. Others will focus, particularly in the life sciences, on that end-stage R&D piece, and then moving key intellectual property and technologies into new companies and in licensing opportunities. And others will do scale-up of technologies in areas such as green chemistry to figure out whether a good idea and a promising chemical compound could be scaled up on at an industrial level. And here is our suite of Caesars. You may recognize a good number of them that are here at Discovery today, including Mars Innovation and a good number of other centers that are either represented or here as participants. Now, we've made some significant changes in Caesar that have had a big impact on this last competition, which we are just coming through over this past year. And this is challenging for us, but we think really important for you folks, which is that the Caesar program started off as a program that provided $15 million of funding over 5 years. And the intent was to fund these centers over that 5 years. They would work really quickly to establish a model that would allow them to be self-sustaining. Clearly, that was overly ambitious across all sectors, but particularly those with longer product development cycles. So when we renewed the T's and C's for the program a few years ago, we backed off on that and essentially said, we will not put a time limit on the life cycle of these centers to become self-sustaining, and we will also not prescribe the budgets. So grantees need to build their operating budgets from the ground up and tell us the length of time that it's going to take them to become self-sustaining. So and in our peer review, so with all of our programs, NCE and Caesar, we have a process where after we've done an initial review of letters of intent, for the smaller pool of applicants that make it to the full application stage, we convene independent expert panels for each full application. For the NCE Classics, those tend to be leading researchers from across the world. For Caesar, we're now at a stage where over 90% of the reviewers at the full application stage are coming from the private sector and reviewing the business plans of these Caesars to gauge their plan to sustainability and their financial plan. So some of the key elements for those reviewers are whether or not they've got a viable sustainability plan, they've got a diversity of partners and revenue sources, that they really have built that budget from the bottom up, not started what they thought they could get in terms of the high end of a grant and then work backwards. And also that we want to see that they are not planning the use of our funding to bring them to a cliff and then we'll hope that they find a way to become self-sustaining. We like to see them gradually show a shift where they're decreasing their reliance on Caesar funding over the time period of their grant. Now, business-led NCEs are the last major component of our suite of programs. These are modeled on the NCE Classic program in that they are research networks, and we do fund the research component, but here the business partner needs to be in the driver's seat. Clearly, these are also public and private research consortia, but the lead applicant needs to come from the industry sector, and the focus of the application needs to respond directly to problems identified by a key industry sector. They need to allow the networks to fund private sector partners directly, so the money is one of the only programs through the granting councils that provides research funding directly to firms, but they have to work in consortia. And the main aim of them is really to accelerate the translation of research into commercial products and services and to address bottlenecks and barriers to uptake of new research in the private sector. So a successful BLNCE is really one that has a business-driven approach, but advances on a research program that is designed by the private sector, works with academic partners to address key issues that affect the performance of their whole sector. And this is a massive challenge. It's not easy in Canada to engage the research community in doing more and more R&D. It's that much more difficult to have them do it in a collaborative way that's going to have benefits across a whole sector rather than focusing only on the narrow interests of individual firms. And this is our current suite of business-led NCEs. So as I mentioned, last year was a big year for us. We had competitions running in our full suite of programs. But really, one of the key points that I want to leave you folks with is that mounting a successful application for a business-led NCE, a Caesar, or an NCE is really a good 2-year enterprise. In order to engage the user community and the research community from across the country, and really to establish the governance and the business model for how these are going to work takes a couple of years. So the fact that we do have some upcoming competitions in the NCE Knowledge Mobilization Program, in the CSER program, next year we'll launch competitions both for extensions for some of our existing centers and a separate competition for new centers. The fact that we will be launching these in 2015 is about the right time to start working with the Secretariat on your ideas for applications to these. And in terms of that advanced planning, we really have stepped up the NCE Secretariat's engagement with applicants. So number one, across all of our programs, we have enlisted one first step, which is a notice of intent stage. It's just a marker that you intend to apply. At that stage, it will trigger a conversation with the Secretariat about whether or not it's the right fit to the program. But we also offer a lot more support down to the level now for NCE Classics of assigning a Secretariat person to work with each applicant and go to sit on those early board meetings and really help them cast their application. So that's about it for me. Just a quick note on our support to applicants. I'm happy to take any questions. I think I've gone a little over time, so if they're not, I'm good? Okay. My pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was very informative. Thank you.